Reservation not found. The angry red text blared from the sleek, new check-in kiosk. Peter Clark felt a cold dread as his regional manager, Davies, turned a furious shade of crimson, glaring at him. The hotel's most important client stood bewildered, their face a mask of fatigue. This was the moment Peter's quiet dedication to human connection would either be crushed or finally seen. The Alcott Hotel clung to its faded grandeur like an aging dowager, her velvet worn thin but her posture still proud. In the lobby, the scent of lemon polish fought a losing battle against the faint, sweet smell of dust and decades. At the heart of this dignified decline, standing behind the polished mahogany of the front desk, was Peter Clark. At 37, he moved with a quiet efficiency that seemed to belong to a more meticulous era. His uniform was immaculate, a stark contrast to the gentle fraying of the world around him. To the casual observer, Peter was simply the front desk manager, a man who ensured keys were dispensed and complaints were handled. But his true work, the art form to which he had dedicated his life, lived within a plain, unassuming black binder he called the folio. It never lay open on the counter, but it was the source of his quiet confidence, the scripture of his professional faith. The folio contained no spreadsheets, no KPIs, no cold, hard data. It was a repository of humanity, handwritten in Peter's neat, compact script. It was a living document of care. Mrs. Albright in 302 needed a south-facing room, not for the view, but for the delicate ficus she traveled with, which wilted without 6 hours of direct sun. Mr. Henderson in 511 had a severe feather allergy, a life-threatening detail the central booking system invariably ignored. The Miller family's young son, Ben, was terrified of the dark, so a small, whimsical astronaut-shaped nightlight was to be placed by his bed before their arrival. It held diagrams for arranging furniture to maximize a room's sense of peace, and a private list of contacts, from a 24-hour tailor to a baker who made the city's best gluten-free scones. Yet this dedication was a silent language no one else seemed to speak. The artistry of his work stood in stark contrast to his meager paycheck and the mounting pile of personal bills. His passion was an invisible, unbillable asset, a source of deep personal pride but of no professional advancement. He felt like a high-precision clockwork heart, beating with purpose and passion inside the rattling, indifferent shell of an old machine, slowly grinding itself to a halt. The architect of Peter's professional misery was Mr. Davies, the regional manager. Davies was a man who believed the soul of hospitality could be found on an Excel spreadsheet. He moved through the world with the brisk, humorless energy of a man perpetually late for a meeting about cost-cutting. To him, Peter's folio was not an asset but an aberration, a sentimental waste of billable hours. "We're running a hotel, Clark, not a convalescent home," he'd clipped during his last visit, his eyes sweeping over the lobby with a look of profound disapproval. Standardize, optimize, digitize, that's the mantra. The mantra became a cudgel. Davies championed a new, fully automated check-in system, a series of sleek, impersonal kiosks designed to streamline the guest experience by removing the unpredictable human element. The system was installed on a Tuesday. By Wednesday evening, chaos erupted. An elderly couple, the Gables, who had been coming to the Alcott for their anniversary for 20 years, found themselves locked out of their suite. Confused by the touchscreen interface, they had inadvertently canceled their own keycard. They stood in the hallway, flustered and embarrassed, their luggage at their feet. Peter, seeing the unfolding disaster from the back office, swept in. He bypassed the malfunctioning kiosk, used his master key, and personally escorted the Gables to their room, his calm demeanor a soothing balm on their frayed nerves. He sent up a complimentary pot of their favorite Earl Grey tea, a detail he knew, of course, from the folio. He solved the problem, but in doing so, he had committed the ultimate sin. He had proven the new system fallible. Davies, who was on site to oversee the rollout, cornered him later, His voice was a low, furious hiss. "You undermined the protocol, Clark. You made my multi-thousand-dollar investment look foolish to placate two Luddites." The public dressing down was humiliating, stripping away a layer of Peter's carefully maintained composure. He went home that night feeling hollowed out. The feeling curdled into raw panic when his sister called. Their mother, who lived alone 3 states away, had fallen. She had broken her hip. The surgery was covered, but the subsequent months of in-home care she would need were not. The number his sister quoted was staggering, a figure so far beyond his means it felt like a physical blow. He hung up the phone and stared at the peeling paint on his apartment wall. The folio, his life's work, lay on his small kitchen table. For the first time, it didn't look like a testament to his principles. It looked like a fool's ledger, a record of 1,000 tiny, unrewarded kindnesses that had left him powerless when it mattered most. Grace Vance was a creature of a different world. At 45, she was a self-made tech entrepreneur who had built her empire on a simple but revolutionary premise. That technology should augment human connection, not replace it. She was a frequent guest at the Alcott, a choice that baffled her colleagues who preferred the sterile, hypermodern efficiency of glass and steel chain hotels. Grace, however, came to the Alcott for the very thing it was trying to shed: its soul. And she had long suspected that the hotel's soul resided in the quiet, observant man behind the front desk. She had noticed Peter years ago. It wasn't one grand gesture, but a series of small, almost imperceptible acts of thoughtfulness. The way a vase of fresh daisies, her favorite, would appear in her room on the second day of a long stay. The way he'd have a taxi waiting for her on rainy mornings without her having to ask, knowing she had an 8 a.m. meeting across town. These weren't automated CRM prompts. They were acts of genuine observation. Her curiosity about him had deepened one afternoon when she'd passed the front desk as he was momentarily distracted. The folio was open, and she caught a glimpse of a page. It wasn't filled with numbers, but a hand-drawn sketch, a diagram showing how to rearrange the furniture in a standard double room to create a safe, enclosed play area for a family with a toddler. It was a detail of such profound, empathetic intelligence that it stopped her in her tracks. The full scope of his talent became clear during a particularly stressful business trip. Grace needed to host an impromptu dinner for a notoriously demanding potential investor who had a complex web of dietary restrictions. No gluten, no dairy, no nightshades. Every high-end restaurant she called was fully booked. In a moment of desperation, she mentioned her dilemma to Peter. He didn't even blink. He consulted his folio, made a single phone call, and within 10 minutes had arranged a private, multi-course meal catered by a small, unheralded restaurant run by a chef he knew personally. The food was exquisite, the investor was impressed, and the deal was unofficially sealed over dessert. Grace realized then that the folio wasn't just a notebook, it was a system, a replicable, scalable methodology for delivering excellence rooted in human-centric data. She started watching Peter more closely, and what she saw was a tragic, infuriating paradox. A man of immense marketable talent trapped in a system that was actively trying to crush it. The breaking point arrived on a Friday afternoon. The lobby was a symphony of controlled chaos, rolling suitcases, ringing phones, and the anxious, electric hum of the new check-in kiosks, one of which was blinking an angry red error message. Mr. Davies, in a crisp, tight-collared shirt that seemed to mirror his personality, was presiding over the scene like a warden during a prison riot. He was determined to prove the efficiency of his new system, even if it meant personally terrorizing guests into using it. That's when the Caldwells arrived. They were not just any guests. Mr. Caldwell was the keynote speaker for a major financial conference the hotel was hosting, a booking that represented a significant portion of the quarter's revenue. He stepped up to a kiosk, tapped the screen with practiced impatience, and then frowned. His wife peered over his shoulder. The screen read, "Reservation not found." Davies swooped in, his smile as thin and brittle as a shard of ice. He tapped at the screen himself, his movements jerky and irritated. When the result was the same, his head snapped toward the front desk, his eyes landing on Peter like a hawk spotting its prey. "Clark," he barked, his voice slicing through the lobby's murmur. "What did you do?" Peter, who had been discreetly handling a complicated billing issue for another guest, looked up. "I'm sorry, Mr. Davies. The Caldwell reservation. It's gone. This is your doing, isn't it? Your constant manual interventions, your refusal to trust the system." He strode to the desk, lowering his voice to a venomous, carrying whisper that was somehow more public than a shout. "I know you keep your own shadow records in that ridiculous binder. You've corrupted the data. In front of our most important client this month, you have made us look like incompetent fools." The accusation hung in the air, thick and poisonous. Peter's face went pale. He could feel the blood drain from it, the heat of 100 pairs of eyes on him. For a moment, the world narrowed to Davies' contorted face, and a wave of pure, white-hot rage threatened to surge past his lips. But then he saw Mrs. Caldwell's face, etched with anxiety and fatigue. And in that instant, his training, his principles, his very nature took over. The inner dam of his frustration crumbled, but the exterior wall of his professionalism held firm. He gave Davies a single, unreadable look before turning his full, calming attention to the guests. "Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell," he said, his voice a low, steady anchor in the storm. "Please accept my deepest apologies for this unacceptable error. The fault is entirely ours, and I will rectify it immediately." He ignored Davies' sputtering and turned to his own terminal. His hands, miraculously, were steady as they flew across the keyboard. Within 30 seconds, he had located the phantom reservation, overridden the system's glitch, and upgraded them to the vacant chairman's suite. "We have you in our finest suite, at your original confirmed rate. I'll have your bags sent up at once, along with a bottle of champagne with our compliments." He handled the entire exchange with such quiet, profound dignity that Davies was left speechless. A general whose victory had been stolen by an act of sheer competence. From a plush armchair in a quiet corner of the lobby, waiting for her car, Grace Vance had watched the entire, excruciating drama unfold. She hadn't been reading the financial report on her lap. She had been watching a man's character being tested by fire. She saw the public stripping of his dignity, the injustice of the attack. But more clearly, she saw the unwavering grace with which he absorbed the blow, his focus never shifting from the well-being of his guests. She saw a man who, in the moment of his own professional execution, chose to build a shield for someone else. She slowly closed her laptop. Her expression was no longer one of passive observation. It was one of decision. The next morning, the Saturday light felt gray and tired, mirroring Peter's own spirit. He had spent the night drafting and redrafting his resignation letter, the words feeling both liberating and utterly terrifying. He was at the front desk, the hotel quiet in the early hours, preparing to hand over his keys and the folio, his legacy of care, which he now viewed as a beautiful, failed experiment. He was just folding the letter into an envelope when a calm, clear voice spoke his name. "Mr. Clark, I was hoping I might have a word with you." He turned. It was Grace Vance. She wasn't dressed in her usual sharp business attire, but in casual slacks and a simple cashmere sweater. There was no pretense in her posture, just a direct and focused intensity that made him straighten his own shoulders instinctively. "Of course, Miss Vance. Is everything all right with your stay?" he asked, his professional mask clicking back into place. "My stay is fine, Peter," she said, using his first name for the first time. She gestured toward the black binder on the counter beside him. "I want to talk about that, about the folio." Peter froze. He felt a flush of embarrassment, as if she had discovered a secret diary. "It's just my personal notes, Miss Vance, a way to keep things organized." Grace offered a small, knowing smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her gaze was too serious, too analytical. "With all due respect, Peter, that's not what it is. I saw you yesterday. I've been seeing you for years. What you did for the Caldwells, under that kind of pressure, that wasn't just good service. It was a masterclass in crisis management and brand preservation. She took a step closer to the desk, her voice dropping slightly, becoming more conspiratorial, more exciting. What you have in that binder isn't a collection of notes. It's a business model. It's a system for monetizing empathy. You've created an analog algorithm for human-centric service. And that, she paused, letting the words land, is the single most valuable and rarest asset in the hospitality industry today. Peter could only stare, his mind struggling to process her words. This was the language of Mr. Davies, monetizing asset algorithm, but she was using it to describe his soul, his passion. I am not a philanthropist, Peter, Grace continued, her tone shifting from analytical to propositional. I am an investor, and I see a grossly undervalued asset being managed by a CEO who doesn't understand its worth. She slid a business card across the mahogany. I want to fund you. Not a loan, not a gift, an investment. I want to provide the seed capital for you to launch your own hospitality consulting firm. To take the philosophy in that book, she nodded at the folio, and turn it into a scalable, teachable system that can transform hotels like this one from the inside out. The world tilted on its axis. Peter looked from her piercingly intelligent eyes to the crisp business card, then back. The resignation letter in his pocket suddenly felt like a relic from another lifetime. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. All the years of being overlooked, of being told his methods were archaic and sentimental, of feeling like a ghost in his own career, all of it crested into a single, overwhelming wave. He felt a prickling behind his eyes, a hot surge of emotion that was equal parts shock, vindication, and a gratitude so immense it felt like it could shatter his ribs. This wasn't pity. It wasn't a handout. It was recognition. It was a valuation conducted by an expert of the very part of himself he had been taught to believe was worthless. It was the sound of a key turning in a lock he didn't even know he was trapped behind. 6 months later, the fluorescent hum of the Alcott's lobby had been replaced by the soft, warm glow of recessed lighting in a sleek, minimalist office. On the frosted glass of the door, elegant silver letters spelled out, Aria Hospitality Consulting. The name had been Peter's idea. An aria, he'd explained to Grace, is the moment in an opera when a character expresses their deepest feelings, the emotional peak of the performance. It was the solo, the human moment, the heart of the show. That was what his philosophy was all about. Peter stood before a large monitor, dressed not in a uniform, but in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that made him look taller, more solid. He was leading a video conference with the board of directors of a boutique hotel chain, their faces tiled across the screen. He moved and spoke with a newfound fluidity, an authority that came not from a job title, but from a deep, unshakable belief in his own expertise. Behind him, a projection displayed the interface of the ARIA system, a sophisticated software platform that had transformed the handwritten notes of the folio into a dynamic, intuitive tool. It tracked guest preferences with nuance, anticipated needs, and empowered staff to create those small, magical moments of personalized care. He used the story of the Gables and their anniversary tea as a case study, not of failure but of opportunity. True luxury isn't about thread counts or brand names, he told the board, his voice resonating with passion. It's about being seen. It's about feeling known. That's the currency we deal in. The change in him was more than just sartorial. The perpetual tightness around his eyes had vanished, replaced by a clear, focused energy. The weary slump in his shoulders was gone, his posture now open and confident. He had not only paid for the best long-term care for his mother, sending her photos of his new office that made her weep with pride, but he had also undergone a profound internal renovation. He was no longer a man bracing for the next blow. He was a man building a new world, his world, on a foundation of his own making. The engine was no longer trapped. It was powering a vessel of his own design, charting a course toward a horizon he had once only dreamed of. Grace Vance sat in the serene, climate-controlled quiet of an international airport lounge, the world a distant hum behind soundproof glass. Her tablet chimed softly, a notification pulling her gaze from the ballet of ground crews on the tarmac. It was a new email. The sender was Peter Clark. The message was brief. Grace, attached is our first quarterly profitability report. But that's not the main reason I'm writing. I just wanted to thank you again. Not just for the investment, but for seeing value in a man scribbling in a binder when no one else did. You changed everything. She tapped open the attachment. A graph showed a steep, confident upward curve, far exceeding her most optimistic projections. She looked at it for only a moment before closing the file. The numbers were good, but the words were better. Leaning back, she watched as a plane on the runway began its powerful ascent, climbing gracefully into the vast, open sky. A slow, genuine smile spread across her face, warm, private, and deeply satisfying. Her investment had yielded an excellent return, but the true dividend was something no spreadsheet could ever capture. It was the sound of a life-taking flight.